Hey guys, it's Sean and Dan again with 6G1P. Say hello, Dan.
Hello, guys.
If you're not, if you haven't heard of us, we do these little free videos on 2+2 once every couple weeks. We just take a hand that we thought was interesting or had some good points to cover, and then we post it up on 2+2 for free, and hope you guys learn a little bit about it. Uh, Go ahead and take a look at our website, 6g1p.com, if you're looking for coaching, or if you just want to, see what we offer. So I guess we'll just go ahead and dive into the hand history. This is 100 NL. We played it on Everleaf on Raise and Fold, and we're under the gun with Ace Queen off. And I guess that's the standard open. Not much to talk about there. We'll start with Mr. Ships, our villain. He goes ahead and flats from MP. So let's talk a little bit about his range. Dan?
Sure. The first thing I take a look at is someone's call open range, and also their 3-bet from each position. I see that he has not yet 3-bet from that position, so there's a chance that, and some players will do this because it's so strong to 3-bet there, they'll flat with pocket kings just because they feel like it's hard to get any action. And I noticed that his call open percentage is
Really
very
wide.
wide.
Yeah.
Most players, it's going to be much less, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 10%.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy's playing a wide range of hands in this position. 24% is super wide, so right away I'm going to say you can have pretty much all pocket pairs, any suited ace, basically any suited Broadway, and most offsuit Broadways. He's probably flatting hands like
Yeah,
King.
probably folding Jack 10 off, but maybe flatting hands like King Jack off. Definitely King Queen off.
Yeah, maybe even Queen Jack off,
Mm-hmm.
Ace 10 off. I think he can call in this spot. And then a variety of suited connectors, and not just the big ones. You could have suited one gappers like Jack 9 suited. You could have 10-9 suited, 8-7 suited, normal suited connectors, and yeah, a variety of suited gappers as well.
Yeah, so overall, a pretty wide range, but nothing really crazy. He's never going to have 7-8 offsuit or anything like that. It's just going to be pretty hands that flop pretty well.
Yeah, it's only 21 samples, so we don't know for sure, but I think it's enough to indicate that he's much wider than most regulars are in that position.
Okay. Yep, I would agree. All right, so folds around, and we see a flop pretty good, and we go ahead and c-bet. Kind of a standard size. It was a little smaller. I didn't have a particular reason. Normally I would c-bet $5 here, but I guess with rake it's a little under 7, so it's a right around 2/3 pot, which is relatively.
I think that's fine. I don't think there's necessarily any reason to bomb your c-bet on this drive of board texture. There's nothing to protect against. It's hard for him to have much. So I think that I would normally just size my c-bets on the smallish side on this board with whatever I had anyways.
Okay. And there's one thing here. One of the things that in my game I'm always looking at timing tells, and this guy raised the flop extremely quickly. Just like instantly clicked raise, which may or may not mean anything. It was definitely worth noticing. He raised it to 3x very quickly, and we do have his raise c-bet of 21% on the flop, which is pretty darn high.
That is pretty high, and his fold to c-bet is only 50%. So.
So like types of hands he could raise here for value, it's possible he could have still played aces or kings, but I think we probably both agree he's unlikely to raise it on a board this dry. If he still played that pre-flop, he could have 2s or 3s, or the pot or the remaining queens. But then again, it's also unlikely he'd raise those on the flop as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would say that definitely in this spot. He's polarizing his range, and his range is going to be fairly bluff heavy. I would not say that he can not that aces or kings, if he flatted them pre or out of his range. I think he might raise those sometimes.
Right.
But and I think it's possible he could raise a set as well. But I do think that a lot of times on this drive aboard, they will slow play a set to let you barrel and value town yourself. And I also think that it's unlikely that most opponents will raise a hand like Queen Jack for value on this board. When he raises here, I think that his range is going to be fairly bluff heavy. And it's possible that he's got a set. It's possible that he's got ace queen or kings or aces and his value raising. But I think that he's going to have quite a bit of bluffs. Ace 5, Ace 4 suited, he can have those from pre-flop. Um, are fairly likely candidates. Maybe even a weak pair like pocket sixes just turning itself into a bluff because it's not going to be able to call down, and he just wants you to fold your air. He wants you to fold ace king or king jack on this board.
What about hands like backdoors, like a backdoor club draw, like ace jack of clubs, ace jack of diamonds, things like that?
And I think those would be some other likely candidates, especially hands that have double backdoor draws, like 10 jack of hearts, because it can make backdoor straight or flush.
Right.
Same idea.
Yeah.
King jack of diamonds.
So one thing, just to kind of clarify, especially for some of the micro stakes, the people playing the very small micro stakes, if a guy's raise c-bet was 7, he's not going to have these hands. Some of these hands we're talking about, like the ace 5s and the jack 10s, he's not going to be raising those. One of the reasons is, one, he's a fairly competent 100 in outreg, and he's raising 21%. So it has to be, he's raising a lot, and he can't be raising super wide for value. So he has to be like, these bluffs have to come for somewhere. And so usually it's going to end up being like, these backdoor type draws as opposed to just complete air. So.
For what it's worth, even though we're making his play sound somewhat bad by saying that, like, oh, this is kind of obvious that he's raising light here, I think that his play is actually not that bad, even though it's kind of transparent, because I think even though it's somewhat transparent, the vast majority of regulars, if they're just holding ace high here, or they have king 10, or
what do I do?
Even as strong as pocket 7s, I think a lot of times they say, well, whatever, forget it, and just move on to the next hand.
Because what can we do out of position with, even, like, what's our best air hand? Ace king high. Like, what can we do out of position with that hand? There's not much. We can't call down with it. That's for darn sure. So, yeah, I totally agree. It's definitely not necessarily a bad play, but it is very, very bluff heavy. So, okay, so we do opt to call. We could talk briefly about 3-betting, but I think that, given how polarized his range is, 3-betting doesn't make a ton of sense, because we just, we get him to give us action with the nuts and then, fold all of his air.
Yeah, I would say that even if he was not bluff heavy and had a lower raise c-bet, and it was more just sets where he had more value hands, there's still just no point on 3-betting a board this dry, because he'll just fold his bluffs and continue with his sets. If there was a flush draw on board, then we could consider it, because we could rep a draw ourselves, or we could charge value from his draws. But with no real draws out there, so to speak, there's really 3-betting doesn't accomplish too much for us here.
Okay, and so we do call, and we check the turn, and he checks back very, very quickly. So I think definitely he can just kind of like be giving up here. It's pretty unlikely that he checks. Like, if he raised a hand like aces or kings or ace queen or the sets, if he had a value hand, it's really unlikely that he just kind of like gives up here. Would you agree? That he just stops betting? Completely
take away sets or aces or kings, or really, for that matter, any value hand on the flop. If for some reason he did have 2-3 suited, which even the guy this loose I don't think played pre-flop, but if he did, any value hand on the flop is definitely betting the turn. So we can take away all those hands.
Right. So basically he has tons of air.
Tons of air. Or, potentially he decided to raise thin on the flop with king queen to kind of see where he's at, sort of thing. I don't think that's likely, but
it's possible. And then he decides there's no value on the turn.
And he could also just have a hand like pocket 8s, pocket 6s. He was turning into a bluff, which basically is air against your range once you call the flop, but it's not,
right, not pure air.
Yeah.
Okay.